Welcome to the Seatrade Maritime Podcast. I'm Gary Howard, Europe editor at Seatrade Maritime News, and today I'm interviewing Christian Plum from StormGeo. Christian and I discuss StormGeo's acquisition of BunkerMetric and the capabilities that brings to StormGeo's digital offerings in the area of bunkering operations and optimization. As ever, I start by asking Christian a little about himself.
So I'm Christian Plum. I'm product manager at StormGeo, where I manage our bunker product. I'm based in Copenhagen, Denmark, father of 3 kids. That's the short introduction.
Great. Looking at your CV, you're clearly very qualified in the field of computer science and you've got a lot of exposure to the maritime industry throughout your career. Could you tell us a little bit about your personal expertise and what you've done in your career so far?
It was a bit of a coincidence I got into this industry originally. I studied computer science with an interest in algorithms. A long time ago, 20 years ago now, so around 15 years ago, I needed to write a master thesis to finalize my studies. And I got in contact with Maersk Oil Trading at the time. That they were interested in building basically a bunker planner, quite similar to what I'm doing on now. So that's how I got into this. I started learning about the industry. I built the first versions of this bunker planning tool, and then it was for Maersk liner feed, but that's how I got started. Then been working with bunkers and the digitalization of shipping since. So for the last 15 years or so, that's been a professional career. And very much kind of in the crossroads of bunker shipping and digitalization and trying to build different tools that can support different decision makers, operators, and others in the shipping industry, and how they can make a little bit better decision using some digital tools.
It strikes me that these tools are very much in the sort of the win-win space in the maritime industry. And perhaps to get a bit more detail on that, could you sort of lay out what the main bunker procurement challenges are facing the shipping industry as it is today?
It's an area where there's a lot of external factors impacting what they should consider, right? So overall, right, the goal is that if you buy bunkers, you need to, number one, have enough to execute the voyage the vessel is going on. Number two, you need to make sure that the fuel you get, the bunkers you get, is satisfactory quality, that there's no issues that it can cause on engines, and that it's that is compliant, right, with the OFAC and other rules, so you're getting, say, legit bunkers. Those are some more basic practicalities, and further on, of course, then you need to get it at the right price, right? So you should make sure you do not pay more than you have to, and this is also much where our tools come in, that we can help find the right price and where you should buy that. Considering that what you need as a bunker buyer and operator to manage those complexities, that you have enough, that you have the right quality and you have the right price. But at the same time, you have a lot of external factors impacting how you solve that, right? And that's very much on huge external pressure to reduce emissions, right? So that is both on CO2, which is very much being debated in these years. Just a few years back, there was a lot of talks about sulfur, on NOxes also, where there was some new sulfur limits which came into just 2-3 years ago into effect. So that increasing theme in the last couple of years, that regulations from governments have impacted how can you buy, how can you burn bunkers, and impacts how you can do that. And looking further out, of course, we have a lot of, say, new rules likely coming in with carbon taxes and other things which will CII, and that impacts your bunker consumption. But also you have new fuel types, new engine types, and that have a very different operational pattern, a very different emissions pattern, and that all needs to be considered. It's a very interesting space to be in because there's so many things continuously evolving. At the main mind, in a price environment which is extremely volatile, based on the war in Ukraine, right? We had a huge increase in particular in gas prices for LNG vessels, but also in all the other price types, and this impacts the industry a lot in how they should buy and burn bunkers. So a lot of external things that you need to manage, but still trying to satisfy these basic things, that enough fuel at the right quality at the right price.
Like you say, it's a lot of moving parts. And how does digitalization help in that, and how can it improve bunkering operations?
Of the things just went through, right? An overall theme is that it all adds complexity, right? So You have more regulations means more complexity, both because you need to make sure that the plans that you generate for how you buy and burn bunkers, they need to satisfy these rules. It means that cost structures of the what you're buying may be also more complicated. Maybe you buy some fuel, but maybe there's a different carbon footprint, so eventually there'll be different taxes that will follow them that you need to consider. Different fuels, they may have a different, say, impact in different jurisdictions. So maybe in the EU they will have one set of rules. Maybe other parts of the world there will be a different set of rules, and the cost structure will be different. So that's a complexity. And the same, you have that similar technical side, right? You have new fuel and engine types coming in. So, for instance, LNG vessels, they use, well, obviously LNG is the main fuel, but they also need some amount of MGO, which is more of a distillate product in some amount, right? So and they need the right mix of those, and you cannot get all of this in all ports, so you need to manage that. And if we look further down the road, then newer vessels, newer engines will have even more differing operational properties. And again, it's complex, and then it depends very much on the specific vessel and the specific voyage and the prices there. So all this complexity, that's the way you can manage this is by having good planning tools, right? Because 10 years ago, bunkering was fairly easy. There were still two fuel grades you needed to buy, but you could get them almost everywhere, and your pricing was often low, at least compared to today. And then it was mainly just to start burning it and sail away. But that's not going to be the way it is, especially if you look at tomorrow, right? Then the rules, the complexities, they all tie in, and finding the right solution for your specific vessel and voyage, it requires a good planning tool that can help you, say, navigate in all of this and find the right combination that fits your needs and manages the cost best in that way.
Wrapped into that is the question, I suppose, of what the commercial and operational benefits shipping companies should expect from digitalizing their bunkering operations. You know, what are the benefits from these kind of technologies?
In not too many years from now, having good planning tools will be kind of a requirement for operating to manage this complexity. So I think it will be very, very difficult to just find a feasible plan if you don't have tools as that. Aside from that, then, well, often the consequence, if you don't have the good plan, is that, well, you'll end up in an area where you cannot, maybe because of bad planning, you will have to do adjustments on a short notice. And these adjustments are often expensive, right? Because you need to deviate to get the type of fuel you need, or you need to purchase it at a location where pricing is not attractive. And the consequence will be that you'll have higher costs without the good planning tool. So there will definitely be a cost-saving element that, because of having such tools in place and keeping them updated by integrating to all your other tools, your voyage management systems and so on, then you know that you are on top of what's going to happen. So continuously prepared for what's going to happen tomorrow with regards to your bunker needs. So you will save cost by having such tool. And already today, there is a significant cost-saving element because of this. Secondly, that there's the time that your operators and your bunker buyers need, right? You have a tool, it's already digested everything for you. At least you get a suggestion for how you could bunker. This tool and similar ones, the decision support tools, right? So it's not that they can go out and replace a bunker buyer or an operator, but they can help those persons make better decisions faster. That is the outcome. So they can quickly see, okay, you need to do something like this. Go to Gibraltar, buy 500 tons of VLSFO. That's probably a good decision. But maybe the operator has some other information that they need to do a crew change or something else, and they can combine this with the decision, right? But then they can quickly at least assess, where should I find the right option for this? So time saving for the staff that needs to make this decision.
Sure. And is it quite transparent when it comes to the suggestions given to the staff? Does it relay the factors that have been taken into account and the weighting of those factors as to why it's come up with the suggestion?
Absolutely. And again, right, the cost is also the kind of a multi-dimensional, right? There's some cost directly for the bunkers. Then often, at least for the trampers, you need to do a deviation to take the bunkers. What's the cost of that? Maybe we can look at external factors at the cost of delivery, and eventually also looking at quality, at the time that you need to wait for the bunker barge. Many factors we take into account, and this is shown to the operators. And you say, apparently, another value of the tool is also that you can get a more uniform and transparent procurement process, right? Because you can go in a month or a year later and you can see what did we decide to purchase bunkers and this port, and then there's a very detailed calculation of why a certain decision going to Fujairah for 1,000 tons, why was that preferable compared to other alternatives, right? Because all the alternatives have been calculated in detail.
Yeah, so I guess there's the opportunity to learn a bit from your own specific history as a company there as well.
Absolutely. And there's also a lot of option of customizing for the company, right? Because no companies are alike, right? There's different operating procedures, there's different risk appetite, and many different things that can be fine-tuned in together. In a discussion with the company, right, we will set it up in a way that fits each specific company's priorities with regards to bunkers.
And I guess one of those priorities might be on the decarbonization side, whether it's because it's the ethos of a shipping company or because they're soon to be forced into it by some new regulation. I wonder if you could go into a bit more detail on how these digitalized bunkering operations can support maritime decarbonization as a whole.
Yeah. So a lot of discussion on this topic. I think that at least we start like we talk to a lot of our clients on this, right? And I think that most of them, or the majority of them, they absolutely see the need and they would like to start supporting this and then change the world. But what really can allow them to do so that we hear is also that they need to be on a level playing field with the competitors, right? Very few feel that they can start expanding significantly without the competitors doing the same. Shipping is extremely competitive, and that is going to be the driver, right? And that's also why I started talking about these regulations, right? Because fairly clear to us that the way that this could possibly happen is that new regulations come into force that kind of say sets a equal playing field for all the shipping companies, saying, okay, now you need to do this. We will impose a carbon tax. We will require a certain way of operating your vessels or other rules. Those rules will then apply to all, and this is very much where we see with our tools, we can help the shipping companies, right? So once these rules are into effect, and these most likely will be fairly complex rules, you will then have a range of shipping companies that needs to manage these effectively, and that's where we can come in and support them. So we already mentioned we have the sulfur rules come in place, we have CII coming up very soon or already being placed, and further down the route, carbon tax and others. So you end up having a shipping company that needs to manage these effectively. Of course, they have to, and the far majority wants to be compliant, right? And we can then help them be compliant in the most conscious way, and that's very much we can support them. So I hope that makes sense. I think it has to happen. Everyone are on the same page, and then it's then up to them to see how can they most effectively manage these rules, in many cases supported by digital tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And with a company outfit like yours, there's a sort of concentration of that knowledge that perhaps a small or medium operator wouldn't be able to get unless they spent quite a lot of money on having a specific team completely focused on this operation.
Absolutely. And that's also a lot we do. So I think that this will also make a big change because it's more and more becoming a have to, right? Because today many, and now again I'm talking with bunker planning, many they use Excel sheets to manage the planning of the bunkers, right? But with all these complexities coming up, the Excel sheets are very rapidly becoming unsuitable because they cannot capture the full complexity of this, right? And then not many companies they have the option of developing systems their own that fully captures this, nor are they well suited to support software development, and so in that way it's well.
Yeah, it's something that we hear quite often in the space of digitalization and efficiency more broadly is the death of the Excel spreadsheet as the kind
Yeah.
of the go-to
Yeah.
solution for so many problems across the shipping industry, where it feels like it's not really been that long since we've advanced from just writing everything down in a book.
Mhm.
We finally made it to Excel, and now we need to move on again quite quickly.
Yes, and of course there's a lot of value and information in those Excel sheets, but I think when you have complex problem with many different dimensions, right? You need to manage the schedule, you need to manage your bunkers, you need to manage all your regulations with regards to the emissions. You need to have a charter party to consider, and all these they pull in different direction, right? So that you cannot do this in Excel sheet. You need dedicated system support to really do it well and make sure that you look good on all the different parameters that you need to when you make your decision.
Yeah, another thing that comes up quite often is this idea of data security and the handling of especially commercially sensitive data. Is that an issue that's been raised by some of your clients, and how is that dealt with?
Absolutely, absolutely, all of them, right? And again, shipping is extremely competitive. So both they need to be ensured that the data that they share with us on our platforms, that it stays with us. It's not shared with any of the competitors, which is of course it's not. We strong focus of us to ensure that the data is complete siloed towards different customers. Also, that's kind of one side of it, and the other also very important is this, that we've seen these horrific cases of companies who've been hacked and then blackmailed to lock the data, and that we of course also have a huge focus on as a software product, that we are not liable to such risk.
There's quite a large element to some of these upcoming regulations and some of those still being discussed of sort of
Mm-hmm.
tracing the origins of bunkers, especially when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to their carbon intensity. Is that something
Mm-hmm.
that BunkerMetrics will be able to help with?
For all these regulations, that is kind of say how license to operate, right? We will model and reflect them fully in our system. So there's a lot of things being discussed. We usually do not implement before they've been decided, but then we do so in a timely fashion. So yes, that's one of the core focus areas of our tools, to reflect these and support our users in how to manage them.
If there's someone, sitting there with their Excel spreadsheet and they're wondering what steps to take next, what should the shipping industry be doing today to start digitalizing its bunkering operations?
Many are still on the Excel sheet or rules of thumb and so on. Most of them, they have started the path towards utilization. Perhaps they use a voyage management system. Perhaps they use a performance tool. Perhaps they use weather routing. For those, often the next step is to go out and see, well, what tools are there to support bunkerings. I believe that there is a range of options on the market, right? And mature tools as the one we offer, but also others. So there is a market that can cater for the needs. So I think that could be a suggestion, first step to review the ones there, go out and see, learn what these tools do, and then see if they might be suitable for their company. It is something that should be done, of course, looking both at what do we get in terms of cost saving and so on, but also very much with in mind, where do you think that the shipping will go in the coming years? So and where are the bunker market, the rules, regulations going, right? So they're prepared for that, because that's a lot where kind of the value we can do, we can help them protect for this going forward. So I think it's mainly a task of go out there and try them out.
Start having those right conversations.
Yes, learn about it and see how do they it fit in your company. What systems you already have? How can we talk with them? How are your procedures today? Are they the right procedures? How can we support them? Often there is a combined discussion with the decision processes in company, which the tools have to support, right? And we're very eager to help on that discussion as well.
And perhaps if there's someone, still sitting there on the fence about the idea of these technologies, do you have any kind of idea of the average savings that could be expected from BunkerMetric?
I often try to kind of wonder, we say, okay, what is the perfect customer for this? But then the people we actually sign off, they often differ in many ways for them. So I'm trying to be a little bit reluctant on that, but saying the main thing, the more complexity there is in your operation combined with the more volatility there is in both the schedules and the pricing, the more value you will get, right? So the more uncertainty you're facing in your bunkering operations, the bigger value you can get from using these tools, right? And you say that the uncertainty that well, partly it arises from the volatility in the market. This year has been considerable, right? Because what happens when you have quite uncertain prices is that kind of all the rules of thumbs that you may use, they're not valid, right? So, for instance, well, you can go to maybe you have a vessel passing Singapore going up to Northeast Asia, and you may say, well, I can bunker in Singapore. That's often a good choice. And yes, it is a good choice. Maybe 3 out of 4 times, it's the best choice. But maybe 1 out of 4 on that week or that month, then the prices in China or in Korea are lower than Singapore. And you can actually lower your average intake of bunkers in that way, right? And because of the price volatility, that could be a specific case. And well, there is significant parts of the year where Northeast Asia is actually maybe $20, $30 below Singapore. So if, as the company, you have a rule, I always bunker in Singapore, I fill my vessel to 1 month sailing or something like that, well, then you could be losing out, right? Because the volatility in the pricing in that part of the world is dynamic, right? You need to assess it on a daily basis. Should I do Singapore or should I take Busan or Busan or another port or a discharging port that you may encounter on that voyage? Another thing is also maybe more looking at, well, what is the cost of a deviation, right? Because often you need to, this is a more classic example when you bunker, right? Maybe you can buy bunkers at your loading port. It's often could be fairly expensive, but then you have your voyage and then you can deviate for bunkers in route, right? But what is the cost of deviation? Well, of course, it depends on the specific distance that you're deviating. It depends on the duration you need to wait for the bunkers. When you're deviating, do the barge come immediately, or do I have to wait 5-10 hours before the barge is there? That has a cost. And that all, again, ties into what is the higher rate of your vessel? Is it a vessel worth $10,000 a day, 20, 30, 50, 80,000, right? And depending on if you have a very higher rate, for instance, well, then you, of course, are better off taking bunkers at your loading port. But if the higher rate is low or the deviation is low or the price saving is big, that will change the decision. And all those things that they move sometimes on a daily basis, right? And that is where you can benefit from a tool that continues day by day looks into how all these numbers they work against each other and look at the specific vessel and voyage in question to find the right choice.
Yeah, and just going back to the point you made about volatility, I suppose looking ahead at a multi-fuel future, there must be an expectation that volatility is probably likely to increase as we find our way as to what the fuels of the future will be for the maritime industry.
Absolutely. Volatility is probably will go up. We should also probably, because the more fuel types that are used and on the market, you should probably see that the general availability will lower, right? Because today where you have 3 products, perhaps there's a fairly high availability around the world. But if you maybe in a couple of years you have 5 or 6 products on the market, well, there will be less availability around the world, right? Which again will complicate the planning because you cannot go to, let's say, South Africa and expect that you can get LNG there. Perhaps they only have some of the products that your vessel use, right? And that again adds a dimension to your planning that will be complicated by more fuel types on the market.
And another layer of complexity that your
yes,
your Excel spreadsheet just can't handle.
Correct.
Just finally on the BunkerMetric, StormGeo, Alfa Laval acquisitions going on, I wondered if you could speak a little bit about that process and where you are in terms of the acquisition and where you fit within the Alfa Laval family, if you like.
We started Bunker Planner 4 or 5 years ago as a startup, built the product, got the first customer on. The start of this year, I think in February, March, I got in contact with StormGeo's management to see, well, could there be a fit here, right? We very quickly saw that there was a fantastic match between the products BunkerMetric was offering, which was the company that was acquired, and StormGeo's products on weather routing and performance. And much in the way that they talk to the same customers, the operators out in the shipping companies, but they supplement each other well. So the fit was extremely good, and this was large part of why the acquisition made a lot of sense. Since then, that has very much been the focus to see how can we bring this product out to as many as possible of StormGeo's existing customers using some of StormGeo's other products. And that journey has been gone extremely well so far. So now we have the full, say, force of StormGeo's resources engaging with our existing clients, telling them about BunkerPlan, and we have had a lot of interest from them to learn about the tool, to use the tool, and have several trials that have started up to see how does this work, what value can they get from bunker planning. Further down the road, we have a lot of technical things that we've started to work on. How can we integrate the two tools, and how can we get the bunker dimension into S Insight and StormGeo's product that we'll be working on. And also a lot of very promising synergies that we will get by combining these weather performance and bunkering in our StormGeo's tools.
Thank you, Christian, for joining us on the Seatrade Maritime Podcast, and thanks to you for listening.